A woman doesn't lose interest because you weren't good enough. She loses interest because nothing in the interaction made her feel anything. That breaks one of the most common beliefs people carry without ever questioning it. Most assume attraction is built through logic, through effort, through saying the right things at the right time. They believe if you are kind, attentive, consistent, and respectful, desire will naturally grow. But human psychology doesn't work like that. And here's the part most people don't want to face. Every time you interact with someone who just isn't interested, there's something happening beneath the surface that you're not seeing. It's not random, it's not luck, and it's not simply preference. It's pattern recognition. Because while you are focusing on what you're saying, her brain is responding to what you're triggering. Research in evolutionary psychology shows that attraction is largely unconscious. Studies from institutions like Harvard and Princeton suggest that emotional impressions are formed within seconds, often before a meaningful conversation even begins. That means by the time you're trying to prove yourself, something deeper has already started deciding. So the problem was never effort, it was interpretation. You were never taught how to read what actually creates desire. No one explained that attraction doesn't grow from logic, it grows from emotional activation, from subtle psychological shifts, from patterns the brain recognizes instantly but rarely explains. Researchers like Dr. Helen Fisher, who has studied romantic attraction for decades, found that desire is closely linked to dopamine systems, the same systems responsible for anticipation, reward, and curiosity. In simple terms, attraction is not built through comfort alone. It's built through feeling something different. And here's where it becomes even more interesting, because the final behavior in this entire process, the one most people completely misunderstand, doesn't look like attraction at all. In fact, it often looks like distance, like quietness, like nothing is happening. But in reality, it can be the exact moment where everything changes. So instead of focusing on what to do, we're going to understand what actually happens. Let's begin. The first behavior is grounded presence. Most people think attraction starts with looks or words, but psychologically, the first filter is much simpler. It's how someone exists in a space. There's a concept in psychology known as thin slicing, introduced by researcher Nalini Ambady. It explains how people form impressions within seconds based on minimal information: body language, posture, movement, and emotional regulation. What people wrongly think is that confidence needs to be loud, dominant, or attention-seeking. But that's not what the brain responds to. What it actually reads is stability. A calm, composed presence signals that a person is not seeking approval, that they are comfortable in themselves, that they are not reacting anxiously to the environment. From an evolutionary perspective, stability indicated survival value. Someone who remained composed under pressure was seen as more capable, more reliable, more in control. And the condition that proves this is real? Consistency. If that calm presence remains the same regardless of attention, approval, or reaction, then it's not performance, it's identity. And identity is what the brain trusts. The second behavior is subtle tension. Most people believe attraction requires smoothness, constant agreement, easy conversation, no friction. But too much smoothness creates neutrality. What people wrongly assume is that agreement builds connection, but psychologically, contrast builds attention. This is known as polarity. When there is light disagreement, playful contradiction, or unexpected responses, it disrupts patterns. And the brain is wired to notice disruption. Neuroscience shows that novelty triggers dopamine release, the same chemical associated with excitement and curiosity. From an evolutionary standpoint, unpredictability signaled intelligence and adaptability. But here's the condition. the tension stays light. It never becomes conflict or discomfort. The moment it feels heavy or forced, the effect disappears. Because attraction isn't created by pressure, it's created by contrast. The third behavior is selective attention. This is where perception quietly shifts. Most people believe giving more attention increases attraction, but psychology shows the opposite. What people wrongly think is that attention equals value, but attention only feels valuable when it appears chosen, not automatic. When attention is constant, immediate, and unlimited, the brain stops assigning significance to it. But when it is selective, when it feels like it could be given elsewhere, but is being directed here, it gains weight. Research by Dr. Robert Cialdini on the scarcity principle shows that people value what is limited. From an evolutionary perspective, individuals with options and purpose were seen as higher value. And the condition? Authenticity. If selective attention aligns with a full life, interests, goals, direction, it feels real. If it feels forced or inconsistent, the brain detects it immediately. Because humans are highly sensitive to what doesn't match. The fourth behavior is intentional awareness. Most people think listening is passive, but psychologically, being remembered is powerful. What people wrongly think is that recalling details is just politeness, but what it actually signals is recognition. When someone remembers something small, something you didn't emphasize, the brain interprets it as significance. Neuroscience shows that feeling seen activates reward centers linked to bonding. From an evolutionary standpoint, attention to detail signaled investment and awareness. And the condition? Spontaneity. If details are recalled naturally, without prompting, it feels genuine, because authenticity is processed faster than effort. The fifth behavior is controlled vulnerability. Many believe vulnerability reduces attraction, but psychology suggests something more nuanced. What people wrongly think is that vulnerability equals weakness, but what it actually represents is emotional stability. There's a difference between uncontrolled emotional expression and grounded openness. When someone shares something real without seeking validation, it signals self-awareness. Dr. Brené Brown's research highlights that authentic vulnerability builds trust faster than perfection. From an evolutionary perspective, honesty and depth indicated long-term compatibility. And the condition? Independence. If the sharing stands on its own, without needing reassurance, it feels strong. If it seeks validation, the perception shifts, because the brain distinguishes between sharing and needing. The sixth behavior is gradual proximity. Most people overlook space, but space is communication. What people wrongly assume is that physical closeness only matters when it becomes obvious, but it starts much earlier. Studies in proxemics show that people adjust distance based on comfort and interest. Reducing space reflects increasing openness. From a neurological standpoint, proximity heightens awareness. And the condition? No withdrawal. If closeness is maintained without discomfort, it signals acceptance. Because comfort is not shown by approach, it's shown by the absence of avoidance. The seventh behavior is emotional mirroring. Most people think this is coincidence, but it's not. What people wrongly assume is that matching behavior is politeness, but it's actually subconscious alignment. Mirror neurons in the brain activate when we observe and replicate behavior. When attraction forms, this system becomes more active. She matches your tone, your pace, your energy, not consciously, but naturally. From a psychological standpoint, this creates familiarity, and familiarity reduces perceived risk. From an evolutionary perspective, synchronization indicated compatibility. And the condition? Subtle delay. Real mirroring is not immediate. It unfolds naturally. If it's too precise, it becomes imitation. But when it's natural, it reflects connection. The eighth behavior is emotional withdrawal, and this is where everything begins to shift. Most people see withdrawal and assume disinterest, but psychologically, it can mean internal processing. What people wrongly think is that less expression equals less feeling, but sometimes it means more. When emotional intensity rises, some people turn inward. They process instead of express. From a neurological standpoint, this reflects introspection. From an evolutionary perspective, it reflects caution. And the condition? Presence. If she remains focused, engaged, and attentive, even while quieter, it's not disconnection, it's depth. The ninth behavior is controlled restraint. Restraint is often misunderstood as lack of interest, but psychologically, it can signal regulation. When something feels meaningful, the brain slows down. It evaluates. From a neurological standpoint, this involves higher-level processing. From an evolutionary perspective, it reflects risk management. And the condition? Engagement without expression. If attention remains, even with reduced expression, it's not absence, it's control. The 10th behavior is selective responsiveness. It appears inconsistent, but it's not random. What people wrongly think is that inconsistency means confusion, but it can reflect calibration. The brain adjusts responses based on interaction. From a behavioral standpoint, variation increases engagement. From an evolutionary perspective, it reflects cautious investment. And the condition? Underlying consistency. The connection remains, even if expression varies. The 11th behavior is emotional anticipation. This is where the interaction extends beyond the moment. What people wrongly think is that pauses mean hesitation, but psychologically, they can mean projection. The brain begins imagining possibilities. From a neuroscience perspective, this involves future-oriented thinking. And the condition? Return. Attention comes back, often stronger. Because the mind didn't disconnect, it expanded. And finally, the 12th behavior, emotional stillness, the most misunderstood of all. It looks like nothing, no excitement, no visible reaction, just calm. And most people assume this means there's nothing there, but psychologically, this can be the moment of deepest processing. What people wrongly think is that stillness equals absence, but it can mean saturation, too many signals, too much to process at once. So the brain quiets everything. From a neurological standpoint, it stabilizes. From an evolutionary perspective, it marks significance. And the condition? Focused presence. If attention is still there, steady, aware, engaged, then nothing is missing. Everything is happening internally, and this is where everything changes, because attraction was never loud. It was never obvious. It was never something that announced itself clearly. It lives in the subtle shifts, the quiet moments, the behaviors most people overlook. And once you begin to see those patterns, you stop waiting for clear signals. You start recognizing real ones. And that changes not just how you see others, but how you understand human connection itself. Because beneath every interaction, there's always more happening than what's being said. And that deeper layer is where everything truly begins.